see where our markets are. Obviously, Japan and China are the top markets for Alaska, South Korea. So Asia plays a big role for us. But you can see that our products go all over the world. Interestingly enough, you look at the rest of the United States, and that's the dark line right there. Canada is the United States' largest seafood export market for the rest of the United States. So we're tied into the Pacific Rim in a big way, and it comes as no surprise. But it just points out the importance of what happens for us in Asia and how that plays in our state. In terms of jobs, and this gets to how it affects Alaska, we're still the first in private sector employment. It's getting close. The visitor industry is catching up. All you guys out there in the tourism industry, you're going to get us one of these days, but right now it's still the largest private sector job employer. 56,000 direct jobs. In terms of ex-vessel value, $1.5 billion. And first wholesale is $3.63 billion. The breakout, as you can see, groundfish leads the way at 51%, salmon's 22%, and then the other species fit into the total on the ex-vessel value. And in terms of wholesale value, again, groundfish leads the way, and salmon creeps up a little bit, and that's just because of the way that different products are handled and manufactured. And how that affects wholesale value. I put this slide here up because I wanted to emphasize that the fishing industry in Alaska is not just Alaska. It's a federal and state partnership. And if you look under jurisdiction, where the values are starting to come out of, the federal fisheries in the 200 mile zone account for 63% of the value of the fisheries landed in Alaska. And that really is important when you start thinking about allocation issues and as well as science issues and management issues, that we cannot just go it alone. Alaska, the state of Alaska, has to be in a partnership role with the federal government, like it or not. And we're fortunate in that unlike a lot of other parts of the country, the North Pacific Fishery Management Council and the state of Alaska and the Department of Fish and Game and the National Marine Fisheries Service all have a pretty decent working relationship. And Alaska also has 6 boats and controls a controlling boat on the council. That sort of helps too. This is the breakout between at-sea and shore-based. And you can see the shore-based accounts for substantially more in terms of total payments to labor. But that's because also it includes the salmon industry and a lot of the traditional fisheries. The at-sea is largely catcher processors. It's pollock, cod, a few other species, but does not include salmon, by and large. In terms of the workforce, as I said, 56,000 direct jobs, indirect jobs, and induced jobs bring the total up to about 78,000 jobs that the seafood industry is responsible for here in the state. This is a regional breakout, and you can see that the seafood industry plays a big role in employment throughout the regions of the state. It's not just in some of the coastal areas that you would think, like Bristol Bay or Kodiak. In South Central, it's a big player in terms of the job market. And so we wanted to put that up just to show that this is a statewide industry. It's very important to communities throughout the state. The at-sea and extra-regional impacts at the very bottom column there, right in here, that includes not just the at-sea catcher-processor sector that I was mentioning before, but also includes cross-regional production, where fish are caught in one region, maybe processed in another, and maybe even reprocessed or exported from one other region or outside the state. And that's what's captured in that bottom. And I should point out too that the data here does not capture, all this data does not capture the value of seafood once it leaves the state of Alaska. So for example, a lot of our stuff is handled here, goes down to Seattle or at other ports, is reprocessed or shipped overseas. That value, once it leaves the state, is not captured. So the impact nationally is actually probably far greater than what we're showing, but you just can't capture that data. I wanted to touch on one other piece that I am particularly proud of, because I had a hand in helping get it together, and that's the CDQ program. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the CDQ program, but it's a pretty unique Alaskan invention. There was a huge battle over pollock for a number of years between onshore and offshore, and as a result of that, a certain amount of pollock at the North Pacific Council was set aside for community development quota program. And about between 50 and 60 villages along the Bering Sea coast, very small villages, 500,000 people by and large. Some are a bit larger. Nome's probably the largest community that got into the program. Were allowed to form organizations. They were then awarded an amount of that quota, and then they went into partnership with the seafood industry and got money for that partnership. That started in 1992, and it started out that first year. I think it was the grand total of the revenues were like $16 million went to these villages to get started. The program obviously has taken off, and you can see now that the data that we have is through 2005, and their assets were up there around $450 million. It became the largest private sector employer in that region of the state. They have training programs. They're doing development in their communities for a seafood-based economy. Now they can also use some of the revenues to do other kinds of economic development in their communities. And it has really made a difference out in rural Western Alaska, and shows how you can do a market-driven, if you would, and resource asset-driven program to build a real economy, as opposed to trying to use just government dollars to go out and do capital projects. That works for a while, but this is trying to build a real economy in those communities based on a renewable resource, and it's pretty successful, and they have become major players in Alaska's economy. So that federal-state partnership became real important there, and Alaska was able to engineer that CDQ program and really help out there. This shows the expenditures for management and research. You can see the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and that's federal money and then state funds there. And off the charts down here, that's the Coast Guard, and it goes way out there. And probably about, I was talking to Admiral Brooks, and I think it's between 40 and maybe 60%. He wasn't quite sure himself of their mission is related to fisheries enforcement, safety, and that kind of thing. And when you think about the Coast Guard, we really don't think of them much as being an economic driver in the state, but there's a small community of 7,000 people in Kodiak that are just Coast Guard people. And that's a big chunk of change that goes through that community and through the state. And of course, we all know that having the Coast Guard around when you're out on the high seas is a fairly important thing when you start getting in trouble. And so our industry and our folks are very appreciative of the Coast Guard and what they do, and I wanted to highlight those folks. This is just the industry pays about $71.4 million in taxes. It shows where they come from. The largest is the processing taxes and fees. But there's other kinds of corporate taxes, enhancement fees, kind of thing. So overall, what does it mean? What it means is when you look at the wholesale value, which is $3.6 billion. And then through Northern Economics use a modeling tool called Implant. There's an additional indirect and induced output at $2.2 billion, and so it's about $5.8 billion for economic activity that the seafood industry generates in the state. And the other thing I didn't put up there is, in terms of manufacturing capabilities, about 80% of manufacturing that goes on in Alaska is seafood processing, which says something about our need to maybe get other kinds of manufacturing industries in the state sometime, and maybe do a little bit better job with what we have here in the seafood